The U.S. subsidizes linear philosophy projects abroad via the export-import bank that causes air pollution, health conditions, water impurity, and deficits local agricultural bases of developing livelihoods. Prasad in 16. Through the export and import bank, Obama spent $34 billion supporting 70 philosophy projects around the world. In India, complaints about oil, coal ash, blowing into visually contaminated water and respiratory and some problems, all linked to a project that has more than $650 million in backing. In South Africa, this project is set to exacerbate air pollution problems, deforestation, and water shortages. Assassin has handed a $650 million export finance loan by the U.S. export and import bank. They started to dump their trash into our groundwater. Ash from the enclosed reservoir is setting into surface water of nearby regions, causing the wells to fill up with impure water. The groundwater to the plant had high levels of mercury. Excess mercury in drinking water has been linked to severe nervous disorders and birth defects. Toxic coal dust was found to have settled in the fields located next to the mines. A layer of gray coal dust has settled on his impoverished eggplant and tomato farm, source of livelihood. The lid that we are now is going into medical treatments. And U.S. support for philosophy projects abroad causes escalating methane emissions and is the third largest supporter of such enterprises of the G20 nations. The plan makes a sizable dent in the rate of emissions. GCOS 17 U.S. export import is the third largest supporter of fossil fuels among all G20 countries. U.S. Exxon provided $6 million annually to fossil projects around the world. While Americans have rallied in support of clean renewable energy at home, the U.S. export import bank has made it a priority to hand out money to fossil companies to work on projects abroad. We should be supporting renewables. Large investments by ECAs in oil and gas projects increase the world's emissions of methane, which is 87 times more potent than carbon dioxide over a 20-year period. U.S. subsidy reform gets modeled globally. All the 14 million subsidies could lead to significant emission reductions globally. The ability to make dramatic progress hamstrings U.S. officials delivering projects by other G20 nations. Limiting subsidies would empower the U.S. to push other large economies to do likewise. Limiting subsidies around the world would deliver dramatic carbon pollution benefits. 2. Impacts. First, air pollution causes escalating health crises, death, and threatens extinction. 17. Use pollution kills at least 9 million people. The most comprehensive analysis state was a crisis that threatens the continued survival of human societies. Death to attributes pollution are triple. AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis combined. Researchers said is a huge drag on developing economies. Pollution is one of the greatest existential challenges to the Anthropocene. Pollution endangers the disability of the Earth's support system and threatens the continued survival of human societies. Combined data from the WHO found air pollution was a third big killer leading to heart disease, stroke, lung cancer, and other illnesses. Low-income countries are worse affected, suffering 92% of air pollution-related deaths. It is the most underrated health problem in the world. Second, pollution in developing nations is climate injustice. It causes mass death and devastates quality of life. 14. We close our eyes to those who suffered out of the sight as a result of our own standards. Regulation shifted to asbestos manufactured developing nations where competitive deregulation meant asbestos is life. In the North, protect life by dumping on the poor in the South, widening inequality and environmental injustice. Movements to promote sustainability seek to guard against tunnel vision that fixates on a single goal like reductions in GHG emissions without considering broader implications. Southern nations lack the power to counter the hegemonic international efforts promoting these ventures. Plan text. The House Financial Services Committee ought to reject H.R. 4863, FOE 1029. The House Financial Services Committee is considering the reauthorization of the U.S. export-import bank. Should the mark of H.R. 4863 be approved, the 10-year reauthorization would allow the bank to finance billions of fossil projects overseas. Once fossil financing is curtailed, members of Congress should oppose the reauthorization of EXIM. Ending export-import bank fossil financing directly reduces fossil production. Their loans are the unique cost per investment in capital-intensive dirty energy projects. Reads 613. Article 2.1c of the Paris Agreement calls on governments to address the climate change of the common crisis by making financial flows consistent with the pathway towards lower greenhouse gas emissions. The U.S. export-import bank provides government-backed loans, credit, insurance, and guarantees to support the export of goods and services. It supports and make or break for many capital-intensive practices, especially risky ones like oil, gas, and coal. EXIM sends a signal to other investors and leverages additional private financial support, often driving investment in fossil production that would otherwise not occur. EXIM's energy finance, nearly 90%, has slowed the fossil project. This is the dangerous fossil finance. The bank is reauthorized without a ban on financing fossil projects. Framework. The standard is maximize spectacle well-being. Pleasure is intrinsic good mood. 16. Widely shared judgment is that pleasure is intrinsically valuable. Opinion is intrinsically disvalued. There's something undeniably good about the way pleasure feels and bad about pain. If you tell me you're having soda, I might ask what for. This is reasonable to buy a soda. I might inquire why is buying soda good for. You might answer I want the pleasure of drinking. If I proceed by asking what is pleasure good for, the discussion is likely to reach an awkward end. The reason that pleasure is not good for anything further. We never ask what the end is in being pleased because we assume the pleasure is worthy in itself. Pleasure and pain are reached pleasure is the end of line. In matters of value, this outweighs 8 point is ethical uncertainty. Sensitive ethical debate prove lack of reliable belief formation process, but the value of pleasure is uncontroversial. Skip the viewpoint. Death also outweighs includes the formation of sort of new connections and political strategies. Method. Human institutions are complex, relational, and never complete. Reject after pessimism in favor of political commitment. Gordon 17. If the human beings in making human realities never complete, the anti-black world is not identical with the world's anti-black. Such a world is an anti-black racist project. It's not the historical achievement. It is limitation of version based fact. Other opponents of such a project continue to fight against it. Social death would have been rendered these reflections stillborn. Racism is a project of imposing on relations as a model of dealing with people designated as black. The future is yet to come. Whatever is done will be done, on which the future will depend. Racially ancestral community action without guarantee. Slave rules. Macro active resistance cultivate instability. Claim enslavers that the future belongs to them, not the enslaved. What doesn't initially work transform condition for something to emerge. The human is a thing that enters the system that facilitates or obstructs its movement. No one enters a situation that stops new situation of action and meaning where the system repels initial participation. Such repulsion is a shift in the grammar of how the system functions, especially its dependence on obscure subjects. Combining pessimism with pragmatic policy focus is the only possible political strategy. Anything else reifies Western politics and never leaves this room. 18. The endgame from pessimism as an academic enterprise is limited by its location in the neoliberal university. Degenerate aspects of this analysis are indebted to knowledge about black life liberation produced outside the economy on the ground of struggle. Pessimism that presses on the question of the foundation of person's agency. He goes on to refuse pessimism as a policy of the future. I can't be a pessimist because I'm alive. To be a pessimist, you have agreed life is an academic manner that we can survive then we must survive. The promise of pessimism is far more than an academic matter. Far more than an academic matter. Academic pessimism runs the risk of remaining loyal to the sort of limits of respectability of politics. It's too easy to smooth over the fact that black intellectuals have interests in intellectuals that diverge from those of people who want justice over theorization to versus deploying the generalizing force of theory. The pessimism wants to burn it all down. The question of Afro-pessimism poses, will you run with me? BLM is advancing the concept of the abolition of white supremacy. They call us to account for material consequences of unfinished work of reconstruction. Their message does not reproduce antagonism. It does not ask, we choose, we remain optimistic or pessimistic. We exercise the practice of political that harnesses both animating pessimism to propel activist movements from isolated places of love into collective liberation. Cut the card at liberation. Not reading the Buckmore's evidence. That skip to the Bleicher evidence, or the Bag evidence. Methodological reasons key to predict the consequences of political goals over political balance in response to specific conflicts of politics. Bag insisting the apolitical judgments beneath division, consequences of large social consequences to institutions, particular approaches to intervention like abolishing prisons or imposing redistributive taxes, eschewing blanket pessimism, real estate doors, a commitment to political theory that is contextual, institutionally innovative, and grounded in specific situations. We may advocate for radical institutional proposals, acknowledging the work must be done to render these proposals feasible. Political situations require collective action. Radical action can be counterproductive. Political theory to avoid rash, irresponsible appearance that brought us Stalin's Gulag to US's misadventures. Cut the card and misadventures. Single political strategies are doomed to failure. Cut the tag there. Bleicher, information check, holding one with subjective position without critical scrutiny can have far-reaching consequences. Methodology personalizes the heart of sustainable critique. No single method can ever adequately represent the event, but each should recognize and capture detail or perspectives that others cannot. This means combining methods, especially when they are deemed incompatible. Alright, I'm going to send a new doc with the stuff I didn't read. This might take a while, so do you want me to just tell you what I cut out?
Yeah.
Okay, so, I think it was just on the method page. I cut Gordon at subjects. I cut Sedula at collective liberation.
Could you tell me the line that subject?
Yeah, it's I have no idea how to pronounce that. Especially its dependence on obsequious subjects. And then
I have that at the end of the card.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. That's the last line of it, just in case it was cut. But
Okay.
I imagine there was more of it. Maybe I sent a little bit too little. The Bag evidence was cut at U.S. misadventures, and then I read all of Bleicher. Or no, I cut it at deemed incompatible. Sorry.
Okay, you good?
Yeah.
Ready?
Yeah.
Why'd you break a new app?
Because we think it's good, and because it's
Why
strategic.
didn't you tell me anything about the affirmative?
I mean, that's kind of the point of a new app. It gives you a sort of strategic
That's not-
value.
like,
There would be no
well,
incentive to write, new positions if you didn't get some sort of
you
value
could've
from
told me,
doing
like,
it.
the plant text or something, right?
Well, I mean,
Why
that'd
didn't
kind of defeat the purpose of breaking it. It means that you'd be able to prep it out, which is kind of the
prep you out
purpose.
with the plan text? Why?
I
Okay,
mean,
let's talk
you
about
know
the
what the app
DOID
does.
16
I
evidence.
did a lot of research. I
The
kind of want to be
DOID
rewarded
16
for it.
evidence.
Yeah.
What is the net benefit to climate change policy?
I didn't redo it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Let's talk about the Bleecker evidence. Why is combining methods? If I prove that your method is bad, why should it could be combined for the sake of more?
Our argument is that, so generally the way that you'll prove this is it can be deployed in bad ways. Our argument is that every method and every way of viewing the world can be deployed in different ways, which means the combination of them is necessary to explain what others can't. So yes, the state can be used in good ways, the state can be used in bad ways. Our argument is that we should accept those contingent and valuable utilizations while rejecting sort of the forms of violent
That
impositions
seems like
that it
a
is
claim
utilized
about
for.
a warrant. Why?
I just
can this-
explained the warrant. I mean,
Okay.
yeah.
No, that you explained the conclusion, but you didn't explain the warrant
Yeah.
for why.
I
it
don't,
could
for
be
example,
used
I don't think
to
that
rewrite.
Afro-pessimism can explain gender pay gaps in the workforce. There are
What's
sort of
Afro-pessimism?
contingencies and explanations of
I'm
the
so
world
fucking
that cannot
confused.
be encompassed within a single view of the
Okay,
world.
I'm confused. What does your argument for why Afro-pessimism on the Gordon 17 evidence? What does that have to do with fossil fuel subsidies?
It doesn't. It's, It is meant
Oh,
to
it's
interact with the
agreement.
arguments.
I get
Yes,
that.
it is. It is.
Okay.
It's one of the two arguments
The fuck is
disclosed on your wiki.
Afro-pessimism?
I'm not sure, to be totally honest. It depends on your explanation.
Okay. Let's talk
But
about.
generally it's an argument
what
that says that
fossil
progress
fuel
is
subsidies
impossible.
Does the affirmative defend that it will get rid of?
It ends sort of foreign financing for fossil fuel projects by the Export-Import Bank.
Okay. Okay, let's talk about what is HR 4863?
Yeah, so basically the bill would authorize would reauthorize the U.S. Export-Import Bank without conditioning it on the end of their fossil fuel subsidies that they're giving via the United States federal government to those countries. So our argument is that we should not reauthorize it until it has seized those fossil fuel subsidies.
What niggas told you to read this affirmative?
No one. We think it's a good idea.
Oh, unfortunate. What is air? Do you know who Eric Gardner is?
I think that generally in the context of the affirmative, air means like what you're
Do you know who
breathing.
Eric Gardner
So
is?
like if it's polluted, it means that people can't
Do
really
you know
breathe.
who Eric Gardner is?
Yes.
What is air to Eric Gardner? Could you explain?
It was something that was denied to him via chokehold, but that does not change that like air pollution does kill a substantial amount of people.
Okay. Whatever you say. 4 minutes of prep. Cease prep. I have 3 minutes and 50 seconds. 5 off, please. 5?
Yep.
In case? In case? More often a protection of policy. That's impressive.
I'm gonna go over there.
What? Before I start, could you tell me what cards you cut?
Yeah. Just
So-
not do it. I think,
Not do
or
it.
not. I didn't redo it or Buck Morris. But other than that, I think I told you everything.
Did you read bag?
Yeah. I cut it at U.S. Misadventures.
Let me send it.
Does anyone here have like one more sheet of paper I could borrow? I have enough. Thank you.
You said it out, yeah?
Yeah, I sent it.
Sorry, 1 second. Let me get my water.
I also wanted to read another card, so I sent it in the body.
Okay. Is it on one of the offs or just the case?
No, it's just the case. Okay, everyone good? The decision to break a new F against the last black dictator in the pool is actively racist practice, or how whiteness reiterates itself. Whiteness is in the background experience that creates the word government. What some bodies do while other bodies are put under stress. Head 07, we get stuck in endlessly caught up in describing what we're doing to whiteness rather than what whiteness is doing. Whiteness disappears as a category through experience. This disappearance makes whiteness worldly. Whiteness disrupts the very what that coheres the word. Whiteness becomes worldly as an effect of reification. Whiteness can be described as an ongoing and unfinished history which orients bodies in specific directions affecting how they take up space. Whiteness is an effect of racialization. Whiteness is real material and live. Securitization, the refusal to disclose against black votes is securitization from nuanced dialogue because they have no time to prep, which is a voter for black fairness, since people are already disadvantaged due to their skin color. They literally disclose no parts of the affirmative after it being explicitly after. That's an internal link to exclusion offense. Next up, interpretation. The affirmative debater must defend resolve. The United States ought to eliminate subsidies for fossil fuels. Definition resolve means deliberate. Oxford 19. The fully determined upon deliberate. Eliminate means to get rid of entirely. Oxford 2. The removal entirely get rid of fossil fuels includes the investment of humanity into anti-blackness. Alston 15. The possibility of black to surrender remain a problem in political process. Anti-blackness became the fossil fuel for humanity. The West defines itself as human in causes blackness. The anti-blackness is the conditional possibility for the human. The violation. The affirmative does not defend the elimination of all fossil fuels or relations to black death. C point standards. 1 point limits. The deny the existence of anti-blackness as a fossil fuel classes. They have to get away from actually defending the resolution. Allows them to specify whatever part of the resolution that is favorable, even if that they don't acknowledge black death. Their performance of the AC assumes it is inconsequential to the topic. 2 point. Black politics crossed by Alston 15. The 8 point. The explicit exclusion of blackness from humanity is furthered by the ignorance of black bodies as fossil fuel. The AC's lack of elaboration to form anti-blackness. B point. Acknowledging the way that black bodies have been historically used as a fossil fuel is the first way to uncover the antagonism between blackness and humanity. Voter black education. Regardless of who wins or loses, we always get education out the round. Using debate-based displays the assumptions, interactions, and reveals the dominant ideologies that affect our daily lives. TV as 1 point. Resolve. The United States ought to eliminate subsidies for fossil fuels. 2 point. The AC, but with the elimination of subsidies for white supremacy. No RBI. 1 point. Winning T just means you defend a topic, which is the absolute. You shouldn't win because you're fair. 2 point. I shouldn't be dropped for calling out anti-blackness as a form of anti-blackness. The dropping black debaters disincentivizes this in the future and allows anti-black practices to continue. Next up, no slave, no world. Civil society requires gratuitous violence to blackness to function. The fact that whiteness is honest, like aggressors, slavery, and criminal on the black bodies will just end. 10 population growth in Europe is greater than African shipping costs in Europe to America, lower than Europe to Africa and America. If Europe opposed child slavery with the other 50,000 white slaves, then class war would have been likely. Civil society would enjoy faster development of the Americans. Whites would have gained eating kind of they lost in symbolic values, stretches the living economy, civil society, taking out their unconscious living costs and enslaved whites. Whites have been any fact, one of those prepaid that have refused to work. Should be condemned in other stations of civil society, so building safety net is the usual rate. The bonds as a bit of contingent bonds, these ordinances are riddled with contingencies African slavery. So no recognition of the living cost of turning bodies into flesh. The living economy is to constantly invest and save the value of the vagabonds. Why don't want bonds to protect for works is gratuitous. African slavery did not present an actual for civil society. The woman was wrong thought. Incrementalism just out there, even if their advocacy is materially good, the logic of investment within the political is still independently problematic in a state that was never built for black or brown people. The question, our discussion talks about focuses on Eric Gardner. What good is clean air if black people were never allowed to breathe? That means that, and I don't have to win that black people can never smile, but rather that they are instructional antagonism. Giving a slave a glass of water on the plantation might be quote unquote materially good, but does not challenge the structure. Warren 16, it does not matter what legislation we propose is not going to end black suffering. Legislation might allow blacks to endure a little longer, but legislation is not going to be in. You can pass legislation to end warming. Maybe blacks that live in a cold no longer have to mind if they stay 7 on the street with the police shoot them. Incrementalism will leave closer to the impossible political blacks. That's a vicious ruse. You can have policies that they no longer have to inhale cold, but will they be able to get a job? The issue that how many steps are necessary to make it a dent anti-blackness? 1 or 2 more days. That's what blacks have to look to. How vicious is that? Cut the Carter that the voting act to see the terror of blackness as something beautiful instead of framing blackness as dirty, slave, and criminal. We have to embrace the pathologize being a blackness as the best to destroy civil society to physically find social life within social sex and to every analysis that it tries to understand the complexities racial without account for black existence. I mean, simply listen to my chain of equivalence. Black existence is not beginning and a story, but it does relate to totality. Every attempt to defend the rights and liberties of the latest victims of state repression will fail to make substantial gains. Without blacks on board, the only viable political option and only effective defense against the tensions across the wall, greater alliance with the end of black civil society and magnification of state power. No matter how from home I would never be travel, I would never be able to leave my place beyond terror. The captivity of possibility without a fight and escape of violence. There was no going back to before slavery. slavery and going beyond it would entail a revolution. Next up, we'll endorse the entirety of the affirmative apps except we read it and reread it in NOMA. The Fed should stop trading and let niggas do the app. NOMA is a critical linguistic technically to survive white oppression by black folk. This is only acceptable to black form of commodification to blackness. The text of the app in black linguistic is an endorsement of black culture. Smitherson, 06 language, it provides solidarity and gives you a sense of personal identity. AAL serves to bind the enslaved together and thrive in the face of whiteness. The roots of African American speech rely on the counter language, the resistance discourse that were created, the communication system, and unintelligible speakers of the dominant master class. This coded language serves as a mark of total identity and a linguistic bond between the enslaved Africans of disparate ethnicities, genuine recognition of such students, cultures, and a language that is desperately needed. The game plan has always been linguistic and cultural absorption of others into the dominant culture and the indoctrination of other outsiders into the existing value system. Cut the card at system. Next up, counterplan text the app should enter a private and engineering consultation with niggas over whether we should affirm the affirmative app before reading it. To clarify, this is not one or a few black persons, but niggas as a whole. The role of all non-black individuals in this debate should be to surrender to black studies and interrogate your relationship to whiteness. This is key to fracture your understanding of the body and restructure your relationship to humanism. Anything other methodology feeds into a narrative of whiteness in the university. King 19, with awareness of the occurrence that animate non-black interests in blackness, non-black scholars can be receptive to asking how could desire can be useful in the study since the body is implicated in knowledge. Am I willing to make myself an object? The exercise of situating oneself to acknowledge or arouse with that an object of study interrupts the performance of intent. Accountability does not assume an allyship. The university does not produce scholars producing knowledge for eradication of anti-black racism. Cut the card of racism. The case on the methods stuff. Preemption is bad. It's the logic of the criminal justice system where people think that black people are going to be bombed in the same manner every single round. I had the greatest conceivable being in C, but I don't see any fucking preempts of the Gordon 17 evidence. What the fuck is Afro-pessimism? This leads to cruel optimism where we think that contingent victories are actual victories in the structural antagonism. Giving a slave a glass of water is a contingent victory, but it begs the question of whether or not the antagonism is gone. I have 500 years of history on my side. If psychologists were malleable, then it should have changed by now. Chattel slavery only changes its name to Jim Crow than to prison. Dr. Comics, which proves that history is on my side. The Sedale 18 evidence, the combining pessimism with the pragmatic policy. You're going to say that this begs the question of how we get life to begin with. Only the alternative says that getting life is necessary. Viewing blackness as something beautiful is the necessary first step. The Blaker evidence, combining anti-black methods for more just infects good strategies with more anti-blackness, which means the only solutions are alternative. We have an empirical and methodological realism. Yeah.
What does the black linguistic do when Eric Garner is getting suffocated?
Yeah.
It does the app. Okay.
Aphany Ebonics.
My question is more about what
Aphany
black
Ebonics.
linguistic does in response to anti-blackness.
So the specific net benefit of the counterplan is doing the Aphany Ebonics would be a rereading of the affirmative in Ebonics is a way for the Western master not to be able to decode the language of the slave. The second, the evidence, the Smitherson 06 evidence indicates that the roots of African American speech lie in counter language, which is
read the affirmative in black linguistics.
The
It doesn't
literal.
seem to say anything
It's a
about
question
the
of.
export-import
It's a
rate.
question of the form that we problematize of the 1AC. The affirmative has presented
Well,
their plan
my
text.
question is more as to how this counterplan solves the affirmative. I'm unsure as to how,
Yeah, we've
what of the
questioned
counterplan
questioned the
text is
form of the affirmative.
What in the 1NC is an instance of NOMO or a rereading of the affirmative? It seems to justify this.
We say that the feds should stop tripping and let niggas do the affirmative, which means that we have reread the affirmative in NOMO.
Sure. Let's talk about the interpretation. Your Alston evidence, it says that anti-blackness in fossil fuel of the Western construction of humanity. Why should we be held to the definition that the Western construction of humanity created for fossil fuel?
Okay, it's a question of, so we're not saying that you should be held by it, but rather the affirmative should be a rejection. The affirmative is a rejection of the Western definition by
Why does the
criticizing it.
So why does the affirmative accept these sort of things? This seems to be
The affirmative doesn't accept them. The affirmative, one, accepts them as true, and the truth will set you free.
How did I accept the? My app is by
Not
getting
you,
fossil
but
fuels.
exactly. So you violate the shell.
So okay, all right, that's fine. Let's talk about the first off. This card. What's the implication to it in the context of new apps bad?
New apps are bad because it's how whiteness reiterates itself, where you.
Why?
Okay,
How does
so
whiteness
there
reiterate via new apps?
via new apps because you wanted to hide your affirmative from me, even though I wanted to engage with it. Even though I wanted to engage with it, like it's
Like,
very clear.
K teams
The-
and stuff break new apps all the time. Why is that bad?
K teams. Are we talking like okay? Sure, I'll defend that what they did is unethical, is odd
So
fallacy.
people
dude.
just shouldn't break new apps ever?
No,
No?
that's what I'll defend.
Okay, cool. Let's talk about.
Obviously, it's anti-black. Like you have to defend your model of debate.
Let's talk about the end. No, not like 5 seconds. Cool. Starting. Oh yeah, status of the counterplans.
Kinda.
Alright, I have 105 left. Cool, the order is the case, starting on the advantage, then the method page, the,
I've never said that.
oh, sorry. Alright, there's one kernel. Cool, so the order is the case, the topicality shell, the new app's bad stuff, the Wilderson critique, the Black linguistics counterplan, and then the consult Black people counterplan. Yeah, I'm sending it.
Just tell me when everyone's good. Yeah. Cool.
I'm good.
One see 100% drop KCM, so sort of stops pollution in international areas via the United States export import rate, which is an exportation of things like United States energy imperialism and sort of the institutionalization of climate injustice abroad, which is sort of violence against international people and sort of an imposition of United States imperialism. The method page, the preempts argument, I'll answer it here first, is that it's not the same thing as like the logic of the CGS. This is trivializing of sort of real violence and like policing against black people, and the reason that they should lose because like preempting arguments and being able to engage in test realizations at a more in-depth level is not the same thing as the CGS. Second, that it's a question of the impact of that, i.e. like Black Death is the impact to the logic of the CGS, but the only impact of us preempting is being able to more in-depthly test your arguments. The back evidence was conceded. It indicates that sort of imagining the large-scale consequences of actions enables us to understand the way that things can go wrong. Things like which is necessary to prevent things like everything from Stalin's Gulag to United States misadventures, which is net benefit to our sort of model of political engagement. The cool optimism, DAD, this sort of obscures how progress has happened. Things like 13th Amendment, 14th Amendment, etc., which even if it's not sort of changed the entire structure, it definitively was better. Yes, you have the GCBNC, but it was improbable that you were going to read it, and it's a terrible argument anyway. Now, the topicality shell, counter-reaction, all within the violation, our definition, ESI, new date fossil fuels, including coal and natural gas, or coal, oil, and natural gas are currently the world's primary energy source, formed from organic material over the course of billions of years. The opponents to this have failed U.S. and global economic development over the past century. Cut the card at century one, it's most predictable. This is the way the topic is generally debated, which is as key engagement of the affirmative and learning about the intricacies of the way the policies work so we can effectively break them down and sort of interrogate those logic. Second is that their definitions are sort of uses of things like Oxford Dictionary, which are obviously a profound contradiction with all their arguments because they're imposition of white English that ways because it proves you're not actually like legitimately being coherent with your literature, but rather using it for value, which is a form of commodification and a reason you should lose. Third is that their alternate evidence is about how like sort of white supremacists and sort of the West has defined anti-blackness as a false subsidy and fuel it, which means that you shouldn't hold us to that sort of oppressive norm. Fourth is that this is a link of omission, which means you should reject it. We couldn't focus on every single possible thing, i.e. that they would just say that we need to focus on the relation of women to the topic, for example, if we which means that it's impossible to engage in the show, which is reason that you should grant me an auto me. Also, I did talk about things like anti-blackness and the third world, which means that we definitively solve their offense, which is sufficient, and they have no bright line for how much we have to talk about it in the 1AC. The topical version doesn't solve any of our offense because it still sort of links to all of our links of emission stuff, and it's unpredictable. Now, the new stat stuff. New apps are good as key to incentivize innovation because otherwise there's no strategic reason why breaking it is good, which means you always just repeat the same sort of generic app every single time. One is that there are two impact forces. That means you can never engage in critical sort of thinking and force them to think on their feet and apply, which is necessary for sort of to control the interlink to all of their black skills offense on the topicality page because it's necessary for the sort of reacting to the ways that right reactionaries will contest our ideas. Second is that it's key to argument innovation, which means that we are able to develop strategies to sort of challenge those sort of forms of anti-blackness. The 1AC sort of didn't rely on these arguments. The GCB would have also applied, which means that there's no unique impact of this. The Wilderson critique framework. Let's way the case is key clash engagement because otherwise you move the entirety of the affirmative forces of restart, and there's an unlimited number of different orientations you could use to move the affirmative. Link-turn fossil projects are the exporting anti-blackness or broad forces that makes black and African countries rely upon the United States for energy, which is a U.S. project of energy dominance and an extension of colonialism in the white man. Second is the air pollution as well as the fossil development and the world causes pollution and massive amounts of death. That justifies permutation growth. The app is not of the world, but a continued destruction of one especially violent part of it in the interim as we work towards the end of the world, which will not happen inevitably. Material bonds ways. 8 points the reason we even care about their theory. Ontology doesn't affect people, but Black Death does. B point is an ivory tower. Anything else is a form of privilege that uses theory to escape resolving specific conditions of violence. All of their links rely on blackness being ontological. They functionally concede the warrant within our Gordon evidence that indicates that the system are composed of humans because humans are constantly changing. Therefore, the system is also changing, which answers all of their ontology warrants. Even if like giving a slave a glass of water, it won't change the overarching structure. It still is an individual good thing, and the permutation solves that overarching structure. Now, the black linguistic camp one, it doesn't solve any of our offense because you didn't reread the affirmative. You just said do the app, which means it does not access the interlink to this. Second is that it's a form of cruel optimism that says, oh, we'll debate in a sort of a different language and change the way that whiteness is constantly imposed onto black people, which is cruelly after missing and violent. Also, learning about the language of the oppressor and speaking in their language is key to challenge it. It's inevitable. We'll inevitably have to confront it. It's better to do it in debate, which is relatively a safe space. The counterpoint rejected is infinitely rested. You would consult other people and then consult whether to consult. It also means that it's the logic of saying, oh, I have a black friend, so I can say the N-word, which should be rejected. It's also impossible to verify it. I.e. that you would just say that I did consult a black person, which means that it is an untenable model that leads to lying and sort of reinstantiates anti-blackness.
I have 350.
was this argument that you're not out of the world on critique?
Yeah, our argument is that we are a breaking down of a particular facet of the world that causes violence.
Where was I racist? Independent voters. I think that there were two.
Trivialism, holding us to like English grammatical standards and defending like the white supremacist definition is also racist. There were like reasons why individual arguments had like problematic implications, but I don't think they were implicated as like reasons to vote AF.
What was the bag argument that you extended?
Yeah, so it was that debating about the consequences of large-scale policy shifts like the 1AC enables us to understand the ways that political strategies can go wrong from anything from Stalin's Gulag to, what's the other example? The U.S.'s misadventures via that form of scenario planning.
Pessimism, independent voters case.
What's the order on the independent voters?
The Oxford Dictionary shit and like the trivialization shit.
Okay. There is not a doc. Okay, so everyone is good? Okay. This is the framing issue. The 1AR has read off the doc a bunch of reasons why the AF might help black people, but this does not respond to the thesis of our link argument. As long as we win our link argument and apply it to the permutation, you vote negative. But first I'll answer their arguments on the ontology debate. Go there now. Go there now. It's in the state engagement dissent. That's the Wilderson Tin evidence. They're so focused on solving violence within the United States, ignore that anti-blackness is a precondition for civil society's existence. It's in Wilderson Tin. The slaves' use is not limited to the value of their labor, but also their symbolic value to exist as something to satisfy the captor as a symbol of dirty, and slave and criminal to satisfy whiteness' desire for symbols of purity and honor. It would have been more probable for Europeans to take white slaves, but the Liberian economy structured psyches and knew what to turn black bodies into enslaved land, while white-only violence is kept in check. Using structures that are anti-black means that you're complicit in the genocidal project of anti-blackness, which means that the AF is another instance of the slave relation of chattel slavery reproducing itself to the present. I'll line by line your arguments on the ontology debate, which were really bad. It's basically only a cross-application of the Gordon evidence, but you have conceded too many warrants on the Gordon evidence that I put on the underview within the 1 and C. Draw a line from the 1AR to the 2AR and protect the 2NR from impossible implications, and don't go mining through other flows that for implications that were not there in the 1AR and the 2 and making the 2NR impossible to predict. That refused to lose when they conceded our link argument. The first link is the war 416 evidence. This is the incrementalism dissent. The 1AR has not responded to. The 1NC has contextualized the example of the death of Eric Gardner. The AF tries to make air become more clean for niggas, but what good is that when police are choking you on the ground? The legislation proposed by the AF will not be an end to anti-blackness. Sure, black people might not have to inhale fossil fuels, but will they get shot if they walk out in the street? This means that the AF is a form of cruel optimism that is a vicious ruse that keeps black people invested in the anti-black system where we always say, just wait for conditions get better. It will happen soon, which turns the permutation since there is more clean air, but black people won't be able to breathe it. And the AF is never getting to the point to help black people because it's caught up in these small band-aid solutions. Materialism misses the boat. Even if things might seem that they are getting better, their analysis is not under a structural lens, which makes anti-blackness inevitable, which turns your arguments for why materialism is good. Materialism is good. We say that impact turn your notion of the lens of materialism. It makes anti-blackness inevitable, and it makes it through things like cruel optimism. The second, now I'll go for it. Now that was the link that they conceded. The alternative debate. It's then the alternative to view blackness as something beautiful. That was our second evidence. We reject the AF's attempt to use civil society in favor of embracing blackness as a pathology. This allows black identity to affirm its positionality in civil society through pure, visible black culture. This is the only way to solve the impacts of the affirmative. The affirmative has problematized things like Western technologies, and the only way to solve for that is to rupture the forms of Western technology. Obviously, things like fossil fuels will are inevitable in both worlds, but it's a question of what is the best orientation towards solving for that, and the critique is the best orientation. Now, I'm blind. I'm going for the K. They conceded our theory of power, which filters the debate and takes out your materialism arguments. You say that the framework should be to weigh the case, but you cannot weigh the case because it's reliant on an anti-black epistemology, which means that now your second argument is that it makes reliant on the dominant or a dominant Western thought, but we're not reliant. At one point, the alternative solves the case, which means that we are a rejection of Western technology, which solves for this. We're not being dominated, but rather a rejection of whiteness as technology. You say the second is we're not relying on whiteness. The only way the neg is the only way to restructure that relationship to whiteness as dominance. You say that the AF is not a part of the world, but rather a restructuring of the world. But the AF is definitionally part of the world. It's in the incrementalism dissent and the state engagement dissent proves the link. That which proves the link debate. The way you have broken down the facet through material violence is how anti-blackness recreates itself. It's literally slave master logic. That was the above in the extensions. You say material balance. Your A point is that is the only reason we care about the other issues, but it's not the only reason we care. At one point, a theoretical violence necessarily outweighs. One point, it explains the trend of material violence. For example, there's a reason why child slavery only changed its name to Jim Crow than to Mike Brown, but they all die in the same grammar suffering that originates from this fundamental antagonism, which answers your one progress as possible warrant on your Gordon evidence. You say it's the only reason we care, but no, it's not the only reason we care. Even if it's not the only reason we care, because if we understand the antagonism, we can solve the root of the issue, which is the only way to solve for that is the alternative. You say ivory tower dissent. It's not an ivory tower dissent because the alternative necessarily solves the arguments you go for. The Gordon evidence, you have conceded my warrant on the underview that 500 years of history is on my fucking side, not yours. There is a reason why child slavery only reproduces itself to the present. Now, the second argument that'll go against the Gordon evidence is the cruel optimism dissent that even if contingent changes and victories are possible, giving a slave a glass of water on the plantation is a quote-unquote contingent victory, but it doesn't change the underlying antagonism and links it to cruel optimism. You say it's still a good thing, so the permutation solves. You don't even have a text of the permutation, which means that you should hold the line. The permutation links into a chattel dissent where you only steal the alternative for a ballot. Now, yeah, we have proven that we have definitely won the materialism debate. But no, Black Tea. Oxford Dictionary is not a performed contradiction, but rather it's not an endorsement of Western technologies, but rather an objective statement saying that Oxford Dictionary defines us as such. But you say your only chance is the performed contradiction. We're saying that the truth is Oxford Dictionary has proposed is this, and the truth will set you free. The critique is true too. Like it's not a performed contradiction with pessimism. We're not trivializing violence with the argument. The argument was very clear in the 1AC. It said that you use the same logic as the anti-black prison criminal justice system. We're not saying it's literally the same thing as you shooting me because I'm black, but rather saying that you use the same logic. I'm not trivializing violence. Also, kick this argument. Like, I'm a black person. I get to trivialize violence if I want.
Alright. Cool. The order is the formative contradiction, quickly on the trivialism argument, and then the critique. Yeah, actually, immediately after the trivialism argument, it'll be the aff advantage. Is everyone good? Cool. The reform contradiction was woefully undercovered. They have conceded two arguments. First is that their definition from Oxford is the definition of white English and holding us to sort of English grammatical norms, which is a contradiction with all of their scholarship about how we should sort of reject the white structuring of the world as per their anti-blackness arguments, and the argument about sort of black linguistics, and that we should reject the ways that whites have to the world and reframe it, which proves that their argument about how it's like objective truth is sort of a reimposition of the objectivity of whiteness that all of their arguments would obviously not agree with, and Wilderson probably wouldn't think that that like sort of like white language and the way that they have structured English is a good thing. Second is that they've conceded that their alternate evidence is saying that sort of fossil fuels has been defined as anti-blackness by Western discourse, since it is the way we fuel sort of the anti-black world, which means that their argument is sort of saying that we have to focus on that, which is sort of a reinstation and holding us up, and holding us to the sort of the standard of sort of how whites have defined fossil fuels, which is a performing contradiction with all of their scholarship. Their only argument is that it is an objective truth, which is obviously ludicrous and links to all of our argument, because sort of imposing the idea of anti-blackness as an objective truth, as per all of our arguments that you're holding us to anti-black norms, is a link to this argument in and of itself. The performing contradiction and the reason why it always links were 100% conceded. They've conceded that it's commodifying because you're willing to contradict yourself at the smallest instance, which you're only doing for the ballot and not sort of to engage in a greater strategy for liberation, which proves that it will never be taken seriously, and also is an independent reason why you've commodified those sort of forms of black scholarship, which is independently bad and outweighs all of the links to the critique. Cool. It's not covered enough. The case. They've the trivialism argument, they didn't really extend it as an independent reason to reject the Gordon evidence, so it's generally irrelevant. They've conceded that things generally have gotten things like the 13th Amendment, 14th Amendment, etc., have sort of changed the way that anti-blackness operates. It might not have changed the overarching structure, but it proves that contingent reforms can create individual material instances of relief, even if they don't change the broader structure, which means if we win the permutation, it's sufficient to affirm. The sort of more than I'm going for the Gordon evidence is that sort of systems are fundamentally constituted by humans because they are the ones who are part of it, and because humans are constantly changing, those systems also necessarily change, which means that trying to script it as so one sole structure obscures those sort of varying complexity. The affirmative is individually a good idea. It sort of resolves fossil fuel subsidies to external lands that sort of causes massive amounts of pollution and devastates African and third world nations, which is an imposition of United States imperialism abroad, and turns the critique framing issue. We do not need to win the structuralism or ontology debate if we win the permutation. The permutation was framed very specifically and not really answered. It was that the affirmative is part of that sort of breaking down of the world, i.e. breaking down one facet of the world via fossil fuel subsidies that contribute to empirical and material instances of violence, which means we're not mutually incompatible with the sort of broader destruction of the system, which means that which is all their sort of structuralism links completely go away. They say that incrementalism proves that this is wrong, but if this it sort of had embedded class that interacted with incrementalism, and it was 100% dropped. I'm going for the sort of, they say that the alternative Saul's case, there was zero explanation for what this means. How do they reject Western technology? How do they do the plan? They don't. If you have the plan, and if this is true, it proves the permutation, because they're just saying that their alternative includes rejecting it, in which case they also include rejecting fossil fuel subsidies, which means this would justify the permutation. They say they were a structural relation, but if we've won that we are also analysis of the structural relation, the permutation obviously solves their offense. Regardless of the sort of theoretical versus material violence debate, there's no risk of them having any impact to their theoretical argument because the permutation solves all of it, which means you should vote affirmative on risk of offense.
Good debate.